let's start with a couple of facts, right? I don't know if Simone Biles is the greatest gymnast of all time. I do know that heading into the games, that was something I was told. Right? Of course, I grew up in the Mary Lou Retton era, right? We're at Pauley Pavilion, UCLA. My sister at the time was a 14-year-old gymnast, was thinking about quitting the sport, and we all watched Mary Lou Retton, and she was a hero. And was it Kelly Strug, right? That was the one who landed on, had a bad wheel, went through, landed on one ankle. Last night, Simone Biles, who we're told is the greatest gymnast of all time, and the things that she can do are ridiculous. Just a ridiculous amount of talent, grace, like she got the whole package. So apparently she had some sort of self-doubt. She calls them demons. And those demons reappeared last night, and she had a really, really bad first vault and pulled herself out of the team competition. She may or may not compete later in the week in the individuals. You may have heard that from Dan Beyer. Okay. So here's the problem that I have. I got no problem with Simone Biles if she got a mental health issue. My issue is this. It's actually twofold. One, we have a tendency to make every mental health issue one in which you're like, stop the presses, she could be suicidal. There is a difference between somebody being suicidal and having a mental health episode. Okay, so when I question mental health episodes, or Naomi Osaka, who I didn't have any problem with her not playing tennis for a couple weeks, a couple months. Just, I do have a problem with like shaming the media who has been overly kind to her and saying that's her issue when that's not her issue. Her issue is whether it's a crisis in confidence or some sort of mental health struggles. My biggest problem in the world is hypocrites. Right? Don't you hate hypocrites? It's the worst. You say one thing, you do another. Right? I don't like people who are hypocritical. And I also like congruent arguments. What argument is good for one is good for the other. I want you to think about this for a second. When I say LeBron James versus the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA Finals, what comes to your mind? Oh, LeBron choked. Right? Skip Bayless has made a career out of that one NBA Finals series. A career. He had a great career as a writer, but his career has exploded here late in life because he was the guy who was unafraid to say LeBron James choked. Now, I've always kind of been in the reasonable middle. The fact is that if you look back at that team, it was highly flawed first year with the Miami Heat. Most of you couldn't name his starting center. And if I told you Mike Bibby was his starting point guard, you're like, wait a second. Mike Bibby was? Yeah. Games 1 through 5, starting point guard. Didn't play game 6. He was terrible. Jose Juan Barea had his way with the Miami Heat in that series. And they couldn't figure out if they want to play small, play big. But the weight of the world was on the shoulders of LeBron James. It was his second NBA Finals, this time with a stacked team. And they lost 4-2. And because he couldn't make a shot in his last couple games, and he was pressing, he was forcing things, no one said, hey, LeBron James, your mental health, we need to be concerned about this. Last year in the bubble, and we can pull the tape if you'd like, Paul George was roundly criticized. Pandemic P. He stinks. Why is the Clippers so bad? And Paul George came out and was like, look, I wasn't in the right headspace. I'm trying to get it together. Then he had a good game, and he's like, I got my mental health together. Then he had a bad game, and people just say Paul George can't play well in the big moment. So we live in a world where women for years have said, hey, all we want to be judged as is equal. I don't think it's an unreasonable request. We want to be judged as equals. Okay. No one's actually been critical of Simone Biles. No one is going to go back for the next 10 years. There'll be no Skip Bayless going 10 years from now saying, well, Simone Biles may be the greatest gymnast of all time in some people's minds, but that night against the Russians in the team competition, she choked. Nobody would say that, right? Matter of fact, we generally don't have any sort of critique for our female sports teams. We don't. On one hand, you want to be viewed, compensated, treated exactly the same as the men. On the other hand, whatever you do, just don't be critical of us because that's not a space we like to live in. Which is it? You want to have it both ways. It's okay. Everybody wants to have it both ways. But at least admit that you want to have it both ways. I'm not calling Simone Biles a choker. What I am pointing out is one of the incredible parts of Olympians for over 100 years is that no matter where they come from or what they come from and how unfair it is to be judged on a lifetime of work in one performance. It's totally unfair. Who doesn't want a do-over? I want a do-over. How many things have you worked towards and you get to that one final in your semester, you're like, yeah, I wasn't feeling it that day when I took that final in statistics. Not the way it works. Look, she's built up years worth of equity over great performances in big moments. If she really had a major mental health meltdown, she wouldn't be at the games and thinking about competing later this week. So I'm not being insensitive. I understand she's been through a lot personally. I'm sensitive to that. I'm empathetic to that. Not just sympathetic, empathetic towards it. I am. I would also tell you that so have a lot of athletes. They've been through a lot of things. Even the Russians who beat them. We're not supposed to be sympathetic or empathetic towards Russians, but they can't even wear their country's flag. They're all seen as dopers. And no matter how hard at times many of our athletes have gone through, and the gymnasts have gone through a lot more than most everybody else. Having lived in Russia, I can tell you that there's a pretty good chance some of them have been through a lot. Maybe not, hopefully not, what some of our female gymnasts have been through, but in terms of their life and their upbringing and how they're treated. So we got to come up with some sort of plan, right? If you say mental health care, do we automatically, whoa, we can't be critical anymore? Can we be smartly critical? Or is it, look, if you want to be judged like all the rest of the professional athletes, if you don't play well, or if you pull yourself out of a big event, I mean, imagine Clayton Kershaw. How many times did he fail in the postseason? Imagine how many times. Like, did anybody go like, hey, I wonder how Clayton Kershaw's mental health is after blowing another lead in the 7th inning to the St. Louis Cardinals? Hey, I wonder how good Kenley Jansen's mental health is, considering how bad he had been at times in the World Series and the fact that he didn't get to close the World Series out last year. Jose Urias did. Did anybody ask? Of course not. Of course not. When Chris Paul played bad in a big moment, Chris Paul sucks. Chris Paul choked. When James Harden didn't play well in the Western Conference Finals, James Harden choked. James Harden sucked. If any male athlete were to pull out because you're like, I'm just not feeling it today. I got the demons. While most of us would go like, yeah, man, I understand that. The truth is, in sports fans, we expect our athletes to be able to compartmentalize all of their stress, all of their anxiety, and still find a way to perform. It's one of the things that makes Brett Favre's performance tonight, his dad died, a special one. How many times have we seen athletes dealing with incredible stress, not just from the event and from what's possible upon winning that event, but off the court, off the field, off the floor activities that they find a way to push through? Again, I don't know what Simone Biles is dealing with. And in many ways, she's probably a better teammate for having pulled herself out because she was so bad. But we live in this world where you're going to be told all day long, people are critical of Simone Biles. No, they're not. Nobody has been critical of Simone Biles. Nobody. USA Today wrote that it was heartbreaking what happened to Simone Biles. Heartbreaking. Did anybody write it was heartbreaking when the Clippers lost last year because Paul George wasn't in the right mental health space? Has anybody ever said that it was heartbreaking that LeBron James lost to the Dallas Mavericks because he wasn't in the right mental health space and he needed some mental health recuperation and help? His first year in Miami, there's a lot he was dealing with. Of course not. So we'll either admit, which is fair, and I'm okay with this, that we judge and view one sex, one type of sports in one way, and another sex, another type of sports in another way, or we start to have real conversations about it. You pick. Dan Byer, your thoughts. I'm always interested in what you think because you and I do have a tendency to see the world a little differently.
I have a difficult time putting myself in the shoes of that athlete and what they go through. And even with the Osaka stuff last night of her losing and then not speaking with the media, even my wife and I were just kind of discussing just what are the athletes going through? Is there a problem? Isn't there a problem? It's tough for me to put myself in Simone Biles' case, especially Doug. I can't fault her if she's like, my head's not there and I could break my neck. And I understand that there's stress and then there's sometimes of dealing with the stress. But yeah, I don't want to say I give her a pass because that's not the right phrase. But I guess I'm okay with it. I guess I'm okay with her decision and her explanation, and to think that somebody would train so long and then not, and finally get to that point and not be able to come through and perform. She's not afraid of the moment because she's been in that moment before, but just something wasn't right. So
no, listen. I can tell you, like, if you want to talk real mental health, okay, I had whatever you want to talk, anxiety, stress, complete disorientation when I get to the free throw line. Granted, there was no thought that I was going to break my neck. Okay, none. Okay, but in sports, what separates the best of the best is their ability to process all of that stress and anxiety and still perform. I don't know how they do it. I don't. I have no idea. I don't know how Tiger Woods won the Masters without his father, with his son looking down on 18. We remember that moment,
sure.
right? That's an incredible. Can you imagine processing all of those emotions? And I will grant you that the idea of getting hurt does separate it a little bit. But if Simone Biles pulled out from the floor routine or the uneven parallel bars or whatever, we would have had the same reaction. It just happened to be the vault, and it was kind of scary because, she seemed to get lost in midair and still found a way to pull off something that wasn't what she had really
sure.
planned.
Do you? And this
does anybody ever go like, "Hey, man, you were probably in a bad mental health space"? Did anybody say that with? I said that with Ben Simmons. Like, nobody has any. Ben Simmons had a layup in the playoffs and passed it out. Why is that? If you want to get to what the real meaning of it is, dude, he's got the yips. He's got a mental health episode. And again, granting you, there's no chance of him, knock wood, of him breaking his neck playing basketball as it would be tumbling upside down 5 feet above the earth coming off of a pole vault, of a vault. But no one offers that up for the male athlete, for the male. Is it because we view them as amateurs even though they're not? Is it because they're women? Is it because they're small? Is it because of the sport? What is it because? Somebody's going to have to explain that to me.
I don't have that answer. I was going to ask you on, did you feel, and this is an honest question, I'm not trying to prove a point.
No, okay.
Did you feel more pressure like in an NCAA tournament, Big 12 atmosphere because of what was at stake when you were going through the shooting problems? Like, were you like, man, this is Sweet 16, or this is like, because that's what I'm wondering here. Is this because this is just once every 4 years, or in this case 5 years? Is because where that's not like they've got a regular season schedule that they go through and then a tournament every year.
They actually do. I mean, they have the World Championships.
Sure.
They have the Pan Am Games. They do. This is not our first rodeo.
No, but this is the Olympics.
Look, I'm not saying it. Yeah, but it's like the NBA Finals, the NCAA tournament. Like, to be honest with you, no. And I understand when she says demons, whatever, when she says they come and they go, like, that's a real thing. That's an absolute real thing where you can't plan for it. You don't know when you're going to have it, not have it. And maybe this is how we've all been taught. Like we teach people that the sports analogy to life is you're going to feel this pressure. You're going to feel this pain. You got to find a way to push through it. And if you can do that, then the rest of your life is kind of easy, right? Look, I don't know if Jordan was hungover or if it was food poisoning or whatever, but he's a hero because of his ability to push through. That was always it. Kobe Bryant shooting a free throw when he had a torn Achilles tendon. Remember that? Like, I asked Kobe, and I'll keep his answer to myself. But when I had drinks with Kobe, just me and him, I asked him, like, hey, I didn't ask him necessarily about Colorado, but I was like, when that was going down, how did you play? How do you play? How do you find? And that's in the rest of sports. The rest of the entire rest of the sports landscape, all we do is celebrate people who overcome stress, anxiety, things in their life that hold every other normal citizen back, but somehow athletes are able to achieve greatness in spite of it. The exception, apparently, is the Olympics. And I'm interested as to why. All right, it's an ongoing discussion. It is not this is the way it is. But that's the way I feel, and I think it's I think it's an interesting perspective. I don't know about you.